Hello everyone, welcome to JS Cakes and my name is Deepak. Here in the next episode of the series that we have started last week, which is a concept under 10, in which we try to cover up a concept under 10 minutes. So next up in this series is at the rate optional, at the rate self, at the rate skip self, and at the rate host, which are type of a resolution modifiers. But before I stumble upon explaining what these resolution modifiers are, it is important for us to understand how injector work in Angular framework and what are hierarchical injectors in Angular. So if I quickly go to, if you look at the screen right now, I have opened the dependency injection documentation, official documentation from the angular.dev, which describes about hierarchical injectors. So in Angular, essentially, there are four type of injectors: the environment injector, the module injector, the platform injector, and the element injector. So all these injectors are provided at different level. So element injector is essentially an injector which is provided from the component or the directive. The platform injector is the injector which is provided by the app config file whenever you bootstrap an Angular 17 application from the standalone component. The module injector is an injector wherein it provides whenever you give a providers array inside a module, that's when this module injector would come into play. Environment injector is an injector which covers all of it. So above the environment injector, there is another type of injector which is called null injector. So null injector and at the rate optional are kind of linked, and we will see how they are linked and why they how it behaves exactly. So here in the documentation, you can also notice that resolution modifiers are provided over here. The resolution modifier. So there are four type of resolution modifier that we are going to be talking about in this tutorial. So let me just quickly take you to a stack blitz example. And here in the stack blitz example, as you can see that I have prepared so many components scattered over here. So I have some of the code written, and so the first stop in this regard is the @ optional. So @ optional, you may have noticed while developing an Angular application that whenever you provide a service which is not available in any of component module or at the app config level, the Angular throws an error in that regard. So let's just quickly, however, if you provide a service with the @ optional, it marks Angular framework that it is optional, which means if the value of this particular service is not found in the injector tree, don't throw an error, just replace it with null. Let me just quickly give you a brief of this application, that what we're essentially trying to do. This is a basic greeting application. So in this greeting application, when you click on the first line over here, go without greetings. So that means here, if you click on it, it'll take you to a page where there will be no greeting provided. However, there is a service available. And then if you look at the second line, in this case, when you click on this particular go button, it will take you to a component where you will have a greeting available in English. It'll greet you basis what time, what month. Means is that, let's say if the month is January, February, or March, then in that case it'll say hello, happy winters. And then if it is April, May, and June, it'll say happy spring. And in case if it is July, August, and September, it'll say happy summer. If it is October, November, and December, it's going to be saying happy autumn. So let me just quickly go to the greetings module. Inside the greetings module, as you can see that I've already created two files. The first one is an ng module, a greeting module, and the second one is a service itself. So it also has basically given a public method available here. Let me just quickly write down the full code over here. Call, and if any of the component would want to make the get greetings call inside the service. So let me write down the code inside the service, like, and the logic behind it. So first up, I'm going to be writing a date, the date using which I'll determine what greeting to send. Let me store it in a local date and write down the first if condition, in which I'll see what this local date is all about. If the month is the first third month of the year, and in that case I'll return happy winters. Let's say if it is the next 3 months, I'm going to be returning happy spring. And in case of the next 6 months, divided into again 3 and 3, I'm going to be returning as happy summer and happy autumn. Right, so let me just change this here, and we are good. Now I'm going to be going to the first component, which is without greetings. So here, in case of without greeting, or let me just close down everything over here. Now open without greeting component. So here in the without greeting component, I'm going to be basically making use of another component. So the another component is, before I explain about without greetings component, it is important for us to understand what single language component is all about. So let me just open the code for single language component. So here, if you notice, here in the single language component, I have provided at the rate optional, and also I have given private greeting service. I've created an instance of it, and I'm basically taking a greeting message, and this greeting message is being displayed on your HTML page, right? So let me just close down everything. So here in this component, I'm essentially creating an instance of greeting service, taking an instance of greeting service, and I've also marked it as optional. So you can see all these components that I've declared and made available are also given here inside the app module.ts. So now let me quickly go back to single language component. So here, right, so what it would essentially do is, like, it will look for the provider of greeting service. In case if it doesn't find, it will not really throw an error. However, it will just show null. So how have we defined our HTML? So if you look closely at our HTML of this particular component, you would notice that I'm looking at greeting message. In case if the greeting message is not available, I'm basically defaulting it to default message. So let me now define this single language inside the without greetings component. Here in the without greeting component, I have just defined it like this, and a router link is given it over here. So let me also open the console, just in case if there's an error, we would be able to see. Let me click on the first icon now. So as you can see that I have given a default message which reads as no greeting services found for the default message. Now back to the dashboard component. Now let's say if I remove edit optional. So what do you think would happen? You see, I receive a message which says that the greeting service is not found. So what the service is essentially telling us is that the greeting services it is not able to determine where the greeting service is defined, and that's why this error. Let me correct it again by giving optional. So this is what essentially optional means. So optional essentially determines that your provider must be available inside the injector tree somewhere, and if it doesn't find it, it'll throw an error as we had already seen it. So here at the with greetings component, you can, as you can see on your with greetings component, the component is already available. Now I've also declared, and then this component also make use of app single language. So app single language in this case is essentially the same component which was declared inside the without greeting, right? So let me just open this app single language component once again. And we had noticed that if the greeting message is not available, it used to display the default message, and the same component is now available under the with greetings. So now let's see what should happen. So ideally, when you click on this particular button, go over here, it'll execute the first block and will try to render the message. So let me just remove this, and since we are already taking a copy of the greeting message, so let me display that message over here and define it like this. Save it, wait for it to compile, and open the console, so that if there's an error, we will be able to see. Just click on it. As you can also see, as you may have just noticed, that it is still displaying the same. It is not really displaying a greeting message per se. So why is it so? Let me open the with greeting component once again, and if you notice that we have not really provided the greeting service available here in the provider. So let me quickly write that here. There you go. From single language component, happy winters. So since this is of January of the month, and that's why happy winter, back to origin. I click on the same component, click on the first component, and you will notice that it has a different error message, meaning whenever the service was not available, still it is able to determine what to do exactly in the component. So that's how @optional works. Now let's just quickly go to the @self. Before I explain anything more about @self and @skip self, let me just give you a scenario. So let's say while we have been receiving the greetings in English. So happy winters, happy summers, happy, all of these are English messages. Let's say I come from a Hindi background, right? So let me say that as a user, I also wish to receive message in Hindi. However, the service is only available in English. But I only want this Hindi message to appear in one particular component and not everywhere else. So how do we do that? So in order to do this, let me just quickly open another component, which is Hindi and English greeting. So here you can see that I've created a component with Hindi greetings. In this case, okay, before I explain, let me just quickly open this. So I've already injected this service over here, right? And if you look at the HTML code of it, it says app multi-language. Now let me just quickly open the multi-language component over here. Here, if you look at the component.ts file, here is the most important thing. If you want to make use of the greeting service, you want to override the greeting service with your own custom code. So here in this case, in this particular example, I've made use of Hindi greetings class. So inside the Hindi greeting class, I have defined these variables as like these. And then these variables I provided the Hindi message for those greetings. But I also want that English message to appear. So how do I do that? So since in the injector tree, you already have the provider available for greeting service, I want to override it for a particular case in which in case when I want to display that in Hindi. So here, if you look at the providers, I have provided the provider and a provide greeting service, and I want Angular to use class Hindi greeting class in case of greeting service and provide a method out of it. So now if you look at closely here at the constructor, you would notice that I have defined at skip self and self. Skip self essentially means that let's say if you are providing implementation of a particular service, then skip self essentially tells your Angular injector tree is to skip this particular hierarchy and then try. In this case, as I say, English greetings, since why have I called it English greeting? Because since I've defined it as skip self, so the definition that I've given for the Hindi greeting class, it'll skip it and it'll try to find out from the parent. So which is available in the with Hindi greeting. So if you just open this one, I provided a service over here. The first one is going to be basically making, so English greeting service is going to be having an instance of a service which was injected at its parent, right? Similarly, if you look at the next line, which is line number 39, you will notice that I've defined it at the rate self. So at the rate self, essentially, what it essentially tells Angular framework is that use at the rate self for Hindi greetings, meaning in this particular case, whatever which is provided at this level, it is going to be making use of it. So in that, at this component level, since I've provided the providers and this provider, I have also defined a Hindi class in which it returns the Hindi messages. So this particular instance of a greeting service will hold the values as given and defined here in the Hindi greeting class. Let me just quickly click over here and see how it works. So here in the HTML, if you notice, I've provided the English greetings and Hindi greetings. Hindi greetings coming from the same class, English greetings coming from a class above, wherever it is used by using at the rate skip self, right? So now if you can click back on it and go back here. So we have now covered optional, we have covered self, we have also covered skip self. Now let's talk about the host, which is the most important one. Let me close everything over here. So let me just open a few components here and I'll give you a brief of how I have defined them. If you look at the routing module for the at the rate host definition, I've given a component called Hindi or English component. So let me just open Hindi or English component over here. First up, it's HTML page. So from the HTML page, you may notice that I have provided app host, and inside app host, I'm basically including app projected. App projected is a component that I'm projecting inside the app host. And if you open the host component over here, you would notice that I provided ng content, which basically what it essentially does is that it'll take whatever that you provide between its tag and it'll display it over here as is. So ng content. So if you look at the projected one, if you open the projected component, so here in the projected component, I have just inserted the service with at the rate host. So you now notice that I've provided at the rate host here, and I'll explain quickly what is the difference between at the rate self and at the rate host in a while. But let's just try to understand what it is essentially doing here at the projected component. So here in the projected component, I've not declared any providers over here. So if you see, there are just 3 meta properties defined at the rate component. And this particular host component or this projected component is used inside a host component, right? And this host component will simply, will simply put the content of projected component inside its boundary, inside its HTML like this. And then you need to provide ng content about it. You need to provide ng content in order to project that particular component over here inside its HTML. And it is used inside the Hindi or English component. So if you can just open here, you would notice that I'm basically injecting and basically I'm projecting this, and I have essentially provided, I have not really provided the providers here at the Hindi or English component either. Not here. Here, the host component, I'm basically providing the greeting service, right? So here are the greeting service and then the project component. Now let me just quickly run this. If you click on here, it says host testing, host component for Hindi or English greetings. Happy winters. It says the English message here. Thanks for watching. In case if you're liking my content or if you have any particular feedback, please do write down in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to receive your feedback and try to improve my content. I'm going to be posting more such videos in the future. Please do write down in the comment section below, just in case if you want me to particularly focus on a particular topic inside Angular. Thank you very much for listening to this small episode, and I'll see you in the next one.